Welcome to 7:30. There are times in our lives when forced to confront events as appalling as the Sunday Hanukkah massacre, when words simply fail us. What words are there sufficient to describe the horror of what we saw on our screens and the trauma those in Bondi witnessed at first hand? Tonight's extended programme is devoted to understanding what took place and how our leaders plan to respond. Shortly, I'll be joined by the Prime Minister and the New South Wales Premier. Plus, we'll bring you new details of the gunman behind the attack. But first, here's Jason on events as they unfolded last night, using some of that shocking vision.
Just before 6:47 p.m. Sunday night, a father and son on a footbridge open fire. They each have guns and blast round after round into hundreds of defenceless people.
Shots was everywhere. Bam, 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 bam. I look at them down, all blood.
The footbridge is at the north end of the beach, and at a nearby park is a festival of Jewish Australians celebrating Hanukkah. Just metres from the footbridge watching is a young lifesaver. He films the moment from the car park.
Something you shouldn't see here in Australia, and it's just firing after fire after fire. And after that, we just duck behind a car.
The 18-year-old says he fears for his safety, and we've agreed to hide his identity.
There's people screaming, and this bloke turns and looks at us, and I'm like, oh no, he's gonna start spraying us. And he semi-signals for us to move or get away. He's like, I don't know what he was doing. He was just looking at us and doing this. I took it as a getaway sign, and he turns back and just starts spraying this festival.
The chaos continues beyond the bridge as 50-year-old Sajid Akram walks towards the festival. He's tackled by a passerby, Ahmed Al-Ahmed. But minutes later, he returns to the bridge and is shot by police. His son, 24-year-old Naveed Akram, drops to the ground, still alive.
There was one guy left on the bridge. Once he got shot by police,
oh, he's down!
I thought it was safe to come out, so I came out and I just saw the trail of destruction. And I look to my right and I see this elderly couple.
Are these people? Are they?
Yeah, bro.
So I've gone over, and I didn't know if I was still in danger because police were still shooting. So I've gone over and I've checked his pulse, and I'm like, oh no, he's actually gone. I've checked his breathing, and I go to start CPR, and this other bloke comes over and he's like, mate, get out, it's not safe, he's gone. And I see his wife laying on him, face down.
Witnesses who were caught up in the panic take shelter at the Bondi Anglican Church, about 2 blocks from the footbridge. Carlos Ospina is one of them.
Tac, tac, tac. No, that's many times repetition. And I say, this is not fireworks. And I start running and I stop for maybe 5 seconds and I start again. One lady's, the body, that's very sad. It's on the car shooting, and 2 people might try assistant. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Then I prayed for the lady. That's all.
You prayed for her?
Yeah, yes.
Pastor Matt Graham says they took in as many people as they could.
And then we're like, okay, lock the back door. And then we brought people down the front because it's the furthest from the entrance.
He says about 20 huddled in this corner and prayed.
They were right where we are, just in a circle, sitting on the floor because it was the safest corner here. It's furthest away from any windows or doors and things like that. Lots of people just hugging, holding each other, different ages looking after each other. But people praying, people asking for God's peace in this time.
So I thought, look, we'll go see if anyone needs help. I'm here, I know some stuff, I'm certified, I'm a lifeguard. We've walked down to the left on the promenade sort of thing, and I see this bloke who's been shot, and I've hopped the railing, gone down to the car park, I've run over, and there's one bloke attending him. He doesn't seem to know he's doing too much, because this bloke's just bleeding profusely. So I've grabbed the towel, I've tried to stop the bleeding, this guy's bawling his eyes out.
Further up the beach, cardiologist James Otten is at a restaurant.
We hid inside until the sound of the shooting stopped, and then I went outside and started to walk towards the sort of beach area. A man sort of ran in my direction, asking if there was anyone medical who could help. I helped out with the security guard, given his chest wound to prevent air leakage and bleeding, but it was very serious, yeah. I thought he was incredibly brave to be in a situation where he knew that he was in grave danger.
Across Bondi, off-duty doctors and surgeons joined the effort, alongside paramedics and police.
There was a whole group of people and everyone was doing their very best, and it was a very, very difficult situation.
By nightfall, police are swarming the area and find improvised explosive devices in a parked car. In Sydney CBD at 10 p.m, the New South Wales Premier, the Police Minister and the Police Commissioner step up to address the media.
One of the offenders has also been killed and one is in custody. This attack was designed to target Sydney's Jewish community on the first day of Hanukkah. What should have been a night of peace and joy celebrated in that community with families and supporters has been shattered by this horrifying, evil attack.
29 people have been transported to various hospitals around the Sydney area, including 2 police officers. As a result of the circumstances of the incident tonight, at 9:36 p.m. this evening, I declared this to be a terrorist incident.
Tonight, the death toll stands at 15.
I work in medicine, I have seen people die, I've seen things go wrong. I haven't experienced anything quite like this.
It's a subtle wake-up call, I think, to Australians that I think evil is real.
Sunday's Hanukkah event was meant to highlight life and light, not sorrow and terror. Adam Harvey began the day early at Bondi Beach.
A suitably bleak shoreline at Bondi, laden with the chaos of the evening before.
I was shocked to see, obviously, that people had just got up and run, and they've left phones, wallets, picnics, you know, and shoes. Like, so I've collected so many pairs of shoes. Because the tide was coming in, we just moved everything off the shoreline. Can't let this sort of fear instill in our society, and we've just got to get on with it and make sure that our beautiful Bondi is brought back to, you know, the way it should be.
Some of these dawn swimmers were caught in the pandemonium. John Martin was in North Bondi when the crowd surged towards him.
Once they kind of got across that first road, they kind of had a bit of a panicked, frenzied look, and they just started dispersing. And then one of the women who did run up to me kind of said, "You need to start running, you know, there's a shooting."
He returned today for his car and to cleanse.
I think Ocean's a healing place, and we'll all kind of have a quick swim this morning, wash away yesterday.
But for some, these memories are indelible. Bridget Sarks could not have been any closer to the start of the attack. She was the pillion passenger on a scooter, stopped at a pedestrian crossing on Campbell Parade when a car pulled up beside them.
And where we were stopped was right next to the perpetrator's car, and He was getting out the back left-hand side of his car, and for a split second I felt sorry for him because I thought he was tripping over and picking up crutches. And my partner and I were both looking at him by complete chance, and he just picks up what we thought was a crutch, but it's a gun. I've never seen a gun that big in my life, or here, or anywhere, and it was the biggest gun I've ever seen. And yeah, he shot it, and just the smoke went everywhere. And I said, "Drive, he has a gun." Saw the first shot, we took the first shot. I thought I was going to get shot in the back. We drove down the entire promenade just screaming at everyone, "Run, he has a gun." And no one was really believing. Like, I was trying to make eye contact with people because it was like people weren't believing me.
The closest police were about 100 metres away when the attack began.
The first responding police, I assume, was this paddy wagon turning right out of the car park, and their lights went on probably 5 or 10 seconds after the shooting had started, so they've obviously just turned the corner.
She didn't see what happened to those police. For Bridget, it's been a sleepless night.
I'm just thinking of all those poor families with their kids. We drove past the festival, we just thought it looked so sweet. Like, we were like, "Oh, it's a Christmas." We didn't know it was Hanukkah. We thought it might have been a Christmas market. Like, "Oh, we should pop back down there. It looks so good." They had a big screen up. It looked beautiful. Yeah, it's just horrible. Just no words for it.
Sydney's Jewish community is only beginning to comprehend the depth of this tragedy. Some of the 15 murdered people have been named, including businessman Reuven Morrison, former police officer Peter Marr, French national Dan El-Kayem, and 10-year-old Matilda. Holocaust survivor Alexander Kleitman, Tibor Weizen, and Rabbi Yaakov Levitan have also been named.
Well, I've only heard a few names, and I know all of them. From the injured to the deceased. I just couldn't sleep and just thought I want to be here this morning and put on my talit and wear my tefillin and offer some prayers and just to be here, but not quite knowing what to do with all these emotions and feelings.
Rabbi Yossi Friedman's good friend, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, is among those confirmed dead. He's a father of 5, his youngest just a baby.
He was just filled with light. He was just so positive and so obsessed with life and just bringing joy to everyone. Just bringing joy to everyone. And he was a family man. He was a wonderful community man. And the community is just grieving irreparably today. We don't know what to do with ourselves today. This immense tragedy, which occurred against, targeting a Jewish community event, but really it's an attack against all Australians. It's an attack against our Australian way of life. This is a beach that's open to all and should be a safe space for everyone. And as we saw on the footage yesterday, you didn't just have Jewish people running and being attacked. You had anyone who was here. Everyone was running for their lives, fleeing.
What's going through your mind today?
What's going through my mind today is that a place that I love and hold dear to my heart has been turned into a murder scene. Innocent people who are just being Australian, being Jewish, celebrating being Australian, celebrating being Jewish, have come down with intentions just to be with family, with friends, and have been murdered in cold blood.
Today, the crucial thing is being here.
We're coming out to do a few prayers and just offering peace and love, and those who are still hanging on to their lives, many still in the hospital. So it's you want to do everything but what they try to do and instill fear. You want to come out and you want to just show that you have strength and you are going to fight. The terror that they're trying to put in, and make sure that exactly what this festival of Hanukkah is about, that we will continue to put light out there, and it's that they're not going to put fear in us in our own homes.
Australia's political leaders are under intense pressure to lead, to unite, but also to answer questions about how this happened. In a moment, I'll speak to the Prime Minister and the Premier of New South Wales. First, here's 7:30's political editor, Jacob Grieber.
The Jewish community are hurting today. Today, all Australians wrap our arms around them and say, we stand with you.
A sombre moment for a Prime Minister facing the most devastating crisis on his watch.
We stand against anti-Semitism. We will do whatever is necessary to stamp it out. Anti-Semitism is a scourge. It's been around for a long period of time. We need to do whatever we can to stamp it out.
Amid the heartbreak and grief, a rising swell of anger.
What we've seen has been the logical progression, demonising Jews with rhetoric, which slowly builds up to acts of violence, and then acts of violence, which last night took life.
The political fallout has only just begun, and fairly or not, the Prime Minister faces questions and criticism over whether his government has done enough to combat anti-Semitism.
Many Australians this morning are feeling a growing sense of bewilderment. And yes, there is anger. There is palpable anger. Because anti-Semitism in Australia has been left to fester.
The attack has elicited a global response. In cities the world over, celebrations for the first night of Hanukkah turned into vigils for the victims.
That was an anti-Semitic attack, obviously. And I just want to pay my respects to everybody.
A message of empathy from the US President in stark contrast to Israel's Prime Minister.
I call upon you to replace weakness with action, appeasement with resolve. Instead, Prime Minister, you replaced weakness with weakness and appeasement with more appeasement.
There's no getting past the fact that an attack of this kind was a possibility. The country's top spy chief warned in February that cases of anti-Semitism are prominent in ASIO's work.
In terms of threats to life, it's my agency's #1 priority because of the weight of incidents we're seeing play out in this country.
The paramount and fundamental duty of government is the protection of its citizens. So there's been an immense failure, and an investigation needs to come to grips with how that was allowed to take place. But there's no two ways about it. The federal government was very slow to come to grips with this issue. We haven't seen the leadership at a federal level that we have at a state level.
The Prime Minister today emphasising that his government has taken action to counter anti-Semitism since the release of Special Envoy Gillian Siegel's report in July. But there are still recommendations he's not yet responded to, such as stripping funding from universities and monitoring media organisations to clamp down on anti-Semitism.
It's not as if there has been no action since I delivered the plan. We need to accelerate the work. The government needs to come out and fully endorse the actions so that there's no doubt.
The dehumanisation that can often lead to this is something that needs to be tackled by authorities around the country. And too often you have instances where people are allowed to dehumanise one another in the context of political debate and in the context of difficult discussions.
Anthony Albanese today convened Cabinet and a gathering of federal, state and territory leaders. A series of measures are on the table, most notably a push to tighten John Howard's nearly 30-year-old gun laws. The New South Wales Premier says he's determined to limit access to the kind of long-arm weapons used in the Bondi attack.
We need to make sure the firearms legislation in New South Wales is fit for purpose. That does mean restricting firearms for the general public, for the people of New South Wales, but not everybody needs these weapons of mass destruction. You don't need them on New South Wales streets.
People's circumstances change. People can be radicalised over a period of time. Licences should not be in perpetuity.
The rush to amend gun laws in the wake of Sunday's killings follows growing calls in recent months by police and John Howard himself just 2 days ago for a sensible strengthening. Susan Lee, despite earlier criticising the lack of national leadership on anti-Semitism, suggested now is not an appropriate time to consider gun reform.
There are families waiting by the bedsides of their loved ones across hospitals in Sydney today. And my heart breaks for all of them. And with that in mind, this is not a subject I'm going to discuss today.
For all the talk of gun reform, the killings on Sunday were not indiscriminate.
People weren't killed because of what rugby league team they support. They were killed because they were there for a Jewish celebration, and that is something that Australia has to have as a stain on our history.
Prime Minister, welcome to 7:30.
Good evening.
Had you imagined an event like this taking place in Australia?
I certainly had not. This is a horrific act of anti-Semitism, a terrorist action designed to harm the Jewish community on what should be, of course, as the first day of Hanukkah, a day of celebration. Hanukkah in part is about the victory of light over dark. Well, this was a very dark day in Australian history, but together we will emerge into the light.
You say you hadn't imagined it, but amongst others, ASIO boss Mike Burgess earlier this year talked about anti-Semitism as the #1 priority in terms of threat to life. Shouldn't you then have contemplated, not in detail this event, but something like this?
Well, of course, we remain ever vigilant. But this was an event, of course, of a father and son engaged. They weren't part of a wider cell, is the advice that we have up to this point, and therefore the detection wasn't there. We have given every resource to our police agencies, to our intelligence agencies. We provide support to them because we have confidence in their ability to do the best that they can. But tragically, in 2025, we live in a dangerous time, and these two evil people have engaged in this act of anti-Semitism driven by ideology. It's an extreme perversion of Islam that has resulted in these catastrophic consequences, and my heart goes out to the grieving families tonight.
Are you absolutely sure that it was these two individuals acting alone? Have you learnt anything from your briefings in National Cabinet this afternoon from police or from ASIO to leave any doubt about that question?
Well, the clear advice that we have at this point is there's no evidence of collusion. There's no evidence that these people were part of a cell. Clearly, they were motivated by this extremist ideology, and further detail, of course, will be released when the police go through their work. It's an ongoing investigation, an active investigation.
There are obviously so many questions about this father and son. We understand from reporting that the surviving gunman, the son, is in a coma. Is that correct? So he's not yet able to be questioned?
We understand that that is the advice that I've received. But these are people. The father came to Australia on a student visa in 1998. He then applied for a spouse visa, met someone here in 2000. That was approved in 2001. The son was born here. And so this is a circumstance where originally the reports last night indicated that there was someone else who dropped them off. That wasn't the case. The car was there. In addition to that, there were a range of IEDs there, explosive devices that were intended to cause further damage to the event there in Bondi.
Given that the surviving gunman is still in a coma, how can you feel confident to say that they acted alone?
Well, the police were very diligent in, first of all, going to the home in Bondi, but also to the premises that were rented out in Campsie. They have gone through the range of material which is there. They'll release further information about their investigations, but at this point in time, it is ongoing. There may well be further information come to light, but it would appear that these two have acted alone, driven though by this evil ideology.
Let me just ask you a couple of questions about the information that we have already, some of which will be part of our programme. Now, the younger of the two gunmen was known to ASIO in 2019. We understand because of associations with a man later convicted of planning terrorist attacks. He also had associations subsequently with an ISIS so-called spiritual leader in Australia. But in relation to his associations with that first person, have you asked why a person with associations like that, with connections to ideology, to the planning of attacks, was not considered someone who would pose a threat to Australians?
We certainly have, and the advice from the Director General of ASIO is that this person was not on a watch list. He was investigated because of his connections with two people who subsequently, both of whom, went to jail. What ASIO do is they go through and interview anyone who is connected in any way, and they go through, including family members and others. They determined that there was no evidence of this person planning or considering or indeed promoting any act of violence or any act which could be deemed to be anti-Semitic, targeting the Jewish community, which is what occurred. So that investigation went for 6 months, and that is a determination that they made.
You say no evidence of planning acts, but have you asked ASIO or the terrorism section of the New South Wales Police or the AFP whether there was clear evidence of radicalisation?
Yes, we certainly have, and that was not there. So their advice to us back in 2019 was that this person, this man, was associated, I'm not sure the detail of what the association was, but they go through, when they find someone who has been radicalised, to go through all of the connections that they have in a diligent way, and that is a determination that they made.
Isn't being associated with those people a form of radicalisation itself?
Well, it might be that they attended a similar event or the circumstances which are there. But they went through, there was no evidence that they found at that time. That is the advice that we have been given.
So was the younger of the two gunmen, that is the surviving gunman, but I guess the question goes to both father and son. Were neither of them on ASIO's radar in the period, this highly charged period we've been living through since October the 7th?
In the recent period, that is the advice that we've been given.
I want to move to the matter of the father, the older of the two shooters, in relation to the weapons that we know he held in his home. We understand 6 long-arm weapons.
6.
As a matter of common sense, when someone becomes the subject of an ASIO investigation for their potential connections to Islamic State, shouldn't there be an immediate audit of all the weapons, not just that they own, but that people living with them own?
Well, there was an investigation. The father was interviewed at the time as well, was shown no indication of any radicalisation, but that is one of the things that we've done today at the National Cabinet. It's to determine that we need to examine the gun laws that were carried in the wake of the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. This is different from Port Arthur, though. Port Arthur was someone engaged in random violence against people. This is targeted. This is ideologically driven, and therefore is a different form of hatred and atrocity. Port Arthur, of course, was a stain on us that's still being affected, but this is very different. We are looking at the gun laws, looking at, and all state leaders have agreed today to do that. We're also looking at issues such as customs that the Commonwealth can control over what can come in, but the state gun laws, we've got our National Firearms Register as well, that we are providing over $100 million to the states and territories to bring that up to speed.
If I may, Prime Minister, I just want to take you back to your previous answer. You say the father of the that is the older of the two gunmen, but the father of the younger man who had these associations with people connected to ISIS and ISIS ideology. He was interviewed at the time that he came on ASIO's radar, but was the question asked of the father whether or not he held weapons?
Look, I obviously was not a party to...
Did that come up in National Cabinet today?
That interview. What has come up in National Cabinet is the clear advice from the ASIO Director General that they examined this person in 2019. They interviewed his family members as well and others. I mean, that is how this works. Mm-hmm. If someone is found to be an issue, they go through everyone who's associated, then go through the relatives of the people who are associated and try to spread the net out to identify risks which are there. ASIO did that at the time and found that there wasn't evidence of radicalisation. Now, quite clearly, when that occurred is not clear and obviously not known to us, and it's important we deal with facts during this difficult and traumatic period for the entire nation. That is what I am trying to do, and that is what our agencies, including our intelligence agencies, do.
And just briefly to be clear, your priority from National Cabinet in relation to the gun laws, what is the number one priority for you?
I would put them all together, making sure that they operate effectively and that they're kept up to date and that they're updated for the changing threat. We live in a more dangerous world in 2025. The threat of anti-Semitism, as we have seen, is very real. Threats of other occurrences, such as the rise in the far right, which has also been identified, of course, by Mike Burgess, is also a threat as well.
Let me just talk to you about anti-Semitism. I want to bring up what Prime Minister Netanyahu said today. He singled you out personally, he said, for pouring fuel on the anti-Semitism fire by recognising a Palestinian state. Do you accept any link between that recognition and the massacre in Bondi?
No, I don't. And overwhelmingly, most of the world recognises a two-state solution as being the way forward in the Middle East.
This is what Netanyahu also said. Prime Minister, you replaced weakness with weakness and appeasement with more appeasement. It's an extremely damaging statement. Do those words require an answer from you?
What they require me as Australia's Prime Minister at this time is to bring the nation together, is to promote unity, is to make sure that what the terrorists seek, which is to divide us as a nation, to pit Australian against Australian, to say this is a moment of national unity where we need to come together, and in particular, at this time, we need to wrap our arms around members of the Jewish community who are going through an extraordinarily difficult period, not just those who are grieving loved ones and friends, but every member of the Jewish community in Australia. This has been an extraordinarily traumatic 24 hours. My job is to provide support for the Jewish community, is to make it clear that Australians overwhelmingly stand with the Jewish community at this difficult time.
When the inevitable calls arise from some parts of our society linking the Bondi massacre to Muslim immigration to Australia, how will you respond?
That what we've seen in the last 24 hours ago was the worst of humanity in a terrorist act, but we also saw an example of the best of humanity in Ahmed El-Ahmed running towards danger, putting his own life at risk, being shot twice by the second perpetrator as he took the gun bravely off this terrorist, and that saved lives. We in Australia, regardless of where who people believe in, what their faith is, or whether they have no faith at all, overwhelmingly, we are a great nation, and we are not going to allow anyone, let alone these terrorists, to divide us. What we will do is we will unite, We will work together. We will continue to overcome anti-Semitism. We will continue to oppose terrorism, and we will work to show the country just the bravery to honour those people who bravely stood up, including the 2 police officers who'd been injured because they also ran towards danger.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. The Premier of New South Wales is still to come, but first, a joint state and federal counter-terrorism team is now investigating what led to the Bondi attack. Sean Rubenstein Dunlop has more.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. We're here at Bankstown Station, spreading dawah, doing the work of the Prophet, continuing the work of the Prophets.
6 years ago, Naveed Akram was preaching on the streets of Sydney.
Whether it be raining, hailing, or clear sky, Allah will reward you for whatever actions you do in His cause. Inshallah, this will save you on the Day of Judgment.
Aged just 17, he was among a group of street preachers pushing radical Islam.
So we have to remember to always pray and fulfill our obligation to Allah. The word of Allah is that we obey Him and whatever He says we do.
They posed as peaceful messengers of the Prophet Muhammad to passing teenagers.
You guys are in school, yeah? So just ask the teacher, can I borrow this room? And just go pray for 5 minutes and go back out.
Not long after this video was recorded, he came to the notice of Australia's domestic spy agency, ASIO.
The son first came to attention in October 2019. He was examined on the basis of being associated with others.
Senior counter-terrorism officials have told the ABC Naveed Akram landed on ASIO's radar after these police raids on an Islamic State terrorism cell. He was closely associating with members of the cell, including the group's self-declared Australian commander, Isaac El-Matari, who was later jailed for planning terrorist attacks.
The assessment was made that there was no indication of any ongoing threat or threat of him engaging in violence.
Do you believe that to be a statement?
I've reported factually on what ASIO have found, and the investigation went for a period of 6 months. But it was people he was associated with rather than things that he himself had done.
6 years later, at the age of 24, the former plumber is in police custody after the deadliest terrorist attack in the nation's history. His 50-year-old father, Sajid Akram, an Indian-born licensed gun holder from Sydney's south, was shot dead by police at the scene. Investigators are now tracking suspected links to the Islamic State terrorist group in Australia and abroad. Counter-terrorism officials have told 7:30 that Naveed Akram is also connected to a notorious radical cleric, Wissam Haddad, identified by an ABC investigation earlier this year as a spiritual leader of a pro-Islamic State network in Australia.
If you attack Allah and our fellow brothers and sisters, and if you attack our lands, then you are going to be met with men who love death more than you love life.
A lawyer for Mr Haddad has told 7:30 he denies any knowledge of or involvement in the Bondi shootings. Wissam Haddad has been closely watched by ASIO for most of his adult life, but never charged with a terrorism offence. This year, the federal court found he'd breached racial discrimination laws with anti-Semitic lectures.
Towards the end of times, when the Muslims will be fighting the Jews, the trees will speak, the stone will speak, and they'll say, "O Muslim, O believer, there is a Yahudi behind me, come and kill him."
Haddad's linkage to this issue is significant. He is a prime example of what the Director General of ASIO and the Australian Federal Police called awful but lawful. So he skates the edge between violent extremism and hate speech. He skates the edge between extremism and violent extremism. Always very careful to hold but not spill over the other side, but at the same time, he is a preacher of hate.
This year, a former ASIO spy told Four Corners how he infiltrated Haddad's Sydney Prayer Centre, the Al Medina Dawa Centre in Bankstown.
I told ASIO, you think you are in an ISIL camp in Syria or in Iraq. The materials of ISIL, videos, the songs of ISIL, they are aware about all this information.
If I was involved with any criminal activity or terrorist activity, I'm pretty sure we've got a better security system than reporters, and I'd be arrested.
Officials have told us Naveed Akram was also close to this convicted IS recruiter who made headlines for raising a black flag at this year's Sydney Harbour Bridge March and confronting a protester. As police piece together Akram's history of extremism, questions are now mounting about why his father, Sajid, was granted a gun licence.
The fact that his son had those sorts of links should have been a trigger for concern about that ongoing licence. So I do see that that is a failure of the system to pick up this issue. We now need a Royal Commission to look at not just the events of what occurred at Bondi and in the lead up, but to look at the events of the last 18 months. The increased anti-Semitism, the hate speech, identified or been excused as being freedom of expression.
Along with the federal government led by the Prime Minister, the public is also looking to State Leader Chris Minns for answers. He joined me earlier from Bondi. Premier, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks, Sarah.
In retrospect, and I appreciate we're only 24 hours in, but was it a mistake not to have more armed police in place at Bondi to protect Jewish families celebrating the first day of Hanukkah and a plan on how to respond to an attack like that?
Look, I'm sure if we had our time again, we would have responded differently, as would police, as would our entire public order and safety organisations. That's the truth of the matter. We don't get a second chance, unfortunately, and we need to make sure that we make changes from today to protect communities across New South Wales, but in particular the Jewish community of Sydney, who've had to deal with anti-Semitism and rising violence now for the last 2 years.
Have you asked the police how many of their members were deployed yesterday at Bondi?
Oh, look, that's the subject of an investigation. New South Wales Police will have a comprehensive investigation into all of those matters. They were tasked to the Hanukkah celebration and there were police on scene. And of course, the Bondi police station is within 100 metres of the site. A New South Wales Police patrol car pulled up to the bridge and was immediately fired upon. So police were in the vicinity at the event. Look, we would love a second chance at this. We're not going to get that. It's a terrible, terrible day for Sydney.
Earlier this year, I've just put this to the Prime Minister, but Mike Burgess made clear that the primary threat to life was from anti-Semitism. How does it come about that you have a big Jewish gathering like this without those plans being in place?
There were several Jewish events yesterday afternoon, one in Dover Heights, one down here at North Bondi. I think it's important to state that police were tasked with protecting the community and police did engage the shooters on the site. Now, we need to make sure that from today there's a massive police operation for safety and security. And of course, Sarah, we need to learn the lessons of the weekend. What I can promise is a comprehensive investigation, a full independent inquiry into exactly what has happened, and we'll act on the terms of that investigation. We will act on the recommendations. This is a devastating, devastating event for the people of New South Wales. It's particularly devastating for the Jewish community, and it's my responsibility as the Premier of New South Wales to rebuild social and public life for the Jewish community, because it is not an option for them to hide or pretend that they're not Jewish in this beautiful city. We've got to do everything so that they can live their lives in peace.
Have you been briefed in detail about the police response to the event? You mentioned police arriving on the scene in a police car or being shot at. But do you know how long it took New South Wales Police to fire back on the two gunmen?
Look, I do know the rough first draft, if you like, of the circumstances relating to the event, but you have to understand that police investigators have asked and are in the process of launching a full inquiry. Now, it's not just interviewing one police officer or one commander. You're talking about multiple police officers that were involved in exchanging fire with the gunman. Can I also just point out that, yes, it's important that we have an investigation, but tonight, 2 police officers are in critical condition in New South Wales hospitals as a result of engaging these gunmen. So, I mean, enormous and incredible example of courage and heroism from New South Wales police officers, some of whom have only been in the job a number of months. So I think we need to give a bit of time for a full investigation into what happened. I would urge people not to jump to conclusions, but one thing that should be beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that is our police officers acted with bravery and honour and didn't falter in the most terrible of circumstances.
What have you been told about the condition of the surviving gunman, and when will police be able to question him?
They haven't questioned him yet. When his condition improves, of course they will. I assume investigators, and there are scores of detectives involved in this investigation, are keen to get answers from him, but that will depend on him and his medical condition. I assume that'll be in the coming days, but I don't have further information, Sarah.
Yes, I appreciate that. Will it be the job of New South Wales Police to conduct that questioning of the surviving gunman?
Yes, they're the lead agency. They're providing information, of course, to national intelligence agencies, the AFP, the Prime Minister, myself, the Crisis Cabinet in New South Wales. I mean, we're throwing everything at this. This is the #1 priority. It's shocked us. It's a terrible example of violence and anti-Semitism on the streets of Sydney. We need to confront it with a comprehensive police response. We also need to use this as an opportunity to fight anti-Semitism. I mean, the truth of the matter is, anti-Semitism begins with a slogan or a quote, it then moves online, then it's graffiti on a Jewish building, then it's malicious damage and burning down that building, and then it leads to these horrific examples of violence on our streets. We need to fight this kind of racial hatred everywhere we see it.
I want to talk to you about National Cabinet in relation to the gun laws. We understand that there's going to be movement on licensing and on the numbers of guns that a person can hold, as well as that being restricted only to Australian citizens. Of those changes, what is the most urgent that you will be able to bring in, and how quickly can you bring those changes in?
We're looking to recall Parliament as soon as possible to introduce legislation to crack down on gun ownership and gun licensing in New South Wales. The areas that we will look at are the perpetual nature of licences to ensure that people have to renew. We will particularly look at whether criminal intelligence rather than criminal records is a reason to restrict access to a licence. Of course, age limits and access to particular kinds of guns, as well as the quantity of guns. Sarah, what I'm trying to say is that I'm determined to introduce the toughest gun legislation in the country, and I believe it needs to be passed and put into legislation as soon as possible.
Is it possible that the issue of licensing in New South Wales, that the agency responsible for that, for the police in New South Wales, that there was a breakdown in communication between them and ASIO, who at the time interviewed both the father, the Prime Minister just told us, as well as the son, these two gunmen that we saw? Was there a breakdown between ASIO's intelligence gathering after the young man was investigated by ASIO and New South Wales Police and Licensing?
In all candour, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, obviously that's an important part of the investigation and the inquiry into what happened on the weekend, but I can't fill in the blanks on that question, and I don't want to do it until I've got the evidence in front of me.
Premier, the country is obviously in shock today, but for many of us, the Cronulla riots are still somewhat fresh in our memories. Are you and your government in New South Wales preparing for the possibility that there could be a backlash against Muslim communities in New South Wales?
We're preparing for all eventualities. Operation Shelter is one of the largest police operations ever launched in New South Wales. Nearly 500 police officers have already been deployed to this community and others like it across the state. The Police Commissioner, Mal Lanyon, has made it the #1 priority. We're going to put massive resources into protecting the public, and I want to make it absolutely clear that there is no room for so-called vigilante justice. There will be no retribution on the streets of Sydney. Anyone who participates in anything like that will meet the full force of the law. We'll throw the book at them. We are not going to have a situation where there's violence and lawlessness descending on our state. No one wants that, and we will not tolerate it.
Premier, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, Sarah.
Adam Harvey joins me now live from Bondi Beach, where hundreds of people are currently gathered at a vigil. Adam, we can see some of the scene behind you and hear a little of it. Can you describe what the mood is like where you are?
Well, for most of the day it's been sombre, quiet, remarkably quiet. You can walk around here. We don't have the normal sound of the buses going up and down Bondi Road, the cars going by. It's all been restricted to traffic. But in the last little while we've had members of the Jewish community come down here to Bondi, Sarah, to the back of the pavilion, led by Rabbi Levi Wolf, and start singing and holding a bit of a memorial service. And he spoke about life and light and all of the things that are positive about the Australian community and how we can't be led by fear. So I have to say the mood's lifted a little bit by that speech and by the singing. It was quite joyful in parts, which was incongruous for the day that it's been.
And what about the police presence there, Adam? Are they still highly visible around Bondi Beach?
Yeah, well, you've got the Campbell Parade blocked at both ends and police at every intersection. There are hundreds of police down here. The front of the pavilion is still blocked off. It's a crime scene just over there to my left. We've got police forensic investigators still at the scene where all those people were murdered. And there are motorcycle policemen everywhere, but that's Bondi, and of course there's been this terrible event here just 24 hours ago. So that's nothing unexpected for here at Bondi. This sort of wave of policing, I guess, will extend into other areas as well, but right now there are a lot of police here.
Now, Adam, you just described an uplifting speech by the rabbi there, but obviously thousands of people have responded in Sydney today to this event beyond the Jewish community. Can you tell me what you've heard and what you've seen where you are from those people coming down to this vigil?
Well, there has been a procession over the last few hours of thousands of people, mostly young people, I have to say, which says something about the residents of Bondi, but coming down with flowers, with cards, one very poignant card that I noticed written to Matilda, who was the 10-year-old girl who was killed, from a classmate saying, "Matilda, I'm sorry you're dead," which I found very moving, a little handwritten card. The community here, the people I've spoken to from outside the Jewish community, have been extremely sympathetic, very shocked. Some of the people in the Jewish community that I've spoken to say things like, "It's been so heavy for the last couple of years. Things have been getting so much worse since October 7. We thought that this would happen, that it was inevitable, that the anti-Semitism would escalate into violence against the Jewish community."
Now, Adam, you've obviously been in and around Bondi for a lot of the day. If you describe your day from the beginning to the end, has the mood, do you think, changed since you were there very early this morning?
Yeah. Well, this morning it was those people at the beach who, as we showed in the package, who came down, I think, in a way to cleanse what had happened yesterday. A lot of people came down to get their cars as well, so there were tears and moments of very solemn silence down there at the beach. Very quiet here during the day. And a lot of reflection about what this means, what it says about Australia, and members of the Jewish community here are saying that what it should mean is that we support the Jewish community. There's a stand up behind me where Rabbi Eli Schlenger, the rabbi who was killed, is quoted that said, to respond to anti-Semitism, we need to be more Jewish, we need to look more Jewish, we need to act more Jewish, and that is the
right kind of response, and you have seen that today. Lots of yarmulkes, lots of leather straps around arms, people, public Jewishness, Israeli flags that I think haven't been on display, that people have been frightened to show since October 7.
Adam, obviously you're going to be reporting for us on this matter for the rest of the week. Thank you for everything you've done in the last 24 hours and for reporting to us from Bondi, from that very special scene that you've just described. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Sarah.
That's the programme for this evening. Thank you for joining us for this extended programme. There is so much to know and understand about what's happened. Please join us for our continued coverage over the days ahead. For now, everyone, take care. Good night.